The Rohingya people have been described as amongst the world's least wanted and one of the world's most persecuted minorities by the United Nations. They have undertaken perilous sea journeys from Myanmar and Bangladesh seeking protection. And for years, Indonesia's Aceh province offered a safe haven to Rohingya refugees, who are predominantly Muslim. But the sudden influx of boat arrivals has resulted in growing hostility among people in Aceh. CNA Correspondent talks to the local residents and refugees, as well as officials, on how they are tackling the situation. Aceh Province. Located at the northern tip of Sumatra Island, it is bordered by the Indian Ocean to the west and the Strait of Malacca to the northeast. 30-year-old Sudul, his wife, 27-year-old Nisa, and their 3 young children arrived in Aceh in December last year on a rickety wooden boat, much like this one.
तो भरमा मादे मगदालाये गद्वार फुदी फलाये गुली माजे बाद बोन बिशिमाने मरिये गिये अल्लाह यारा बासाये तो बेड़िये गुली हाये ऐसा आदत तुम्हारे थाने हरे बर्मा तो बांग्ला तो मारी फेलेर आरुसुरी उठे बा आलिकिन उठे हो मारी फेलेर बादे लोजायरे गुनाये लोर मारेर गद्वार फुदी फेलेर वो अल्लाह एडिये थाने हर जिम्मीकें ले हो.
They scrounged $850 to pay a smuggler in Bangladesh and sailed for 10 days at sea. But the captain was too scared of an arrest to dock directly at Aceh's shores. A video uploaded to social media caught the attention of the authorities, and they were rescued, along with 175 others. By then, Nisa had fainted. People were starving and had nowhere to go.
Indonesian man has talking about the Raki. Ashare Bitti by the Data Hanatula, my Dr. Ibade.
Jakarta is not a signatory of the UN Refugee Convention and has no obligation nor capacity to accommodate refugees. There have been Rohingya arrivals in Indonesia as far back as 2013. According to the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, which leads the protection response for Rohingya refugees in Aceh and North Sumatra, they began to come every year from 2020.
So the number is definitely higher, and one of the reasons is that there are no prospects for the time being for a solution for a voluntary return in safety and dignity in Myanmar. The fighting is widespread in most of Myanmar. Different fractions are fighting. So the prospect for a voluntary return in safety and dignity is probably the furthest away we have been for a very long time. Then the situation in the camps in Cox's Bazar, given that it's not, territory-wise very large, but there are many people, many Rohingya refugees living there, up to 1 million. And so the situation is, of course, challenging there, not enough resources to manage the whole situation there.
Prior to November 14th last year, 178 Rohingya remained in Aceh from previous boat arrivals. Since then, over 2,000 individuals have arrived on 15 boats, nearly half of them children. For refugee Sudul, after arriving 6 months ago, some things have changed. The family now live in this encampment on the beaches of Kuli village, in a series of makeshift tents. The UNHCR, International Organization for Migration, and other partners provide protection and basic assistance. Doctors from a local hospital check in once a week, seeing a maximum of 50 patients per visit.
Biasanya kasus yang sering kita jumpai di sini lebih ke penyakit kulit. Contohnya seperti skabies atau dermatitis biasa. Mungkin ini semua dipengaruhi oleh hygiene ya, karena mereka kan sanitasi lingkungannya juga kurang, karena mereka fasilitas juga kurang gitu.
The lack of facilities is also concerning for the head of Kuli village, Tengku Muhammad Abu Bakar.
Sepertinya gini campnya, kan kalau hujan kan sayang, yang pertama. Yang kedua itu air bersihnya baru 2 minggu udah ke sini mereka, baru itu yang ada sumur, dan MCK-nya juga kayak gitu. Padahal udah saya bilang sama IOM, UNHCR dan JKMI dan lembaga-lembaga lainnya, udah saya bilang sama mereka tolong secepatnya menangani Rohingya yang ada di kampung saya. Jangan sampai nanti apalagi buang sampah sembarangan dan buang air besar sembarangan. Jadi kan bisa tercemar nanti, apalagi hampir 200 orang di sini.
At Kuli camp, life goes on for the Rohingya refugees. As days become months, their lives are intertwined with those of over 4,000 local residents. Some help Achenese fishermen in exchange for fish. Others, like 21-year-old Aziz Ullah, chose to wed his long-term partner, after she wanted to do it too. Despite the challenges of an uncertain future, the youth sees education as a means to change his life.
I want to study again and also make a better future. I was also working at a job, also like in before, because I have a skill, I have education. I also hope, because our community and our young generation didn't study in Bangladesh. So the government, if allow to study the young generation, it's better. It's my hope.
For now, Rohingya refugees at Kuli camp are waiting for better living conditions. Sites like this one are informal and temporary, with structured locations being one of the ideal goals. Coming up next, we go to one such structured location and glimpse what life is like for Rohingya refugees who leave the beaches behind. About 100 kilometers from the capital, Banda Aceh, and a 2-hour drive takes us to Minaraya camp in PD Regency. It is one of 2 structured temporary shelters for Rohingya refugees. This is the biggest refugee camp in Aceh province. There are 7 buildings in a space of some 4,000 square meters, currently housing over 240 Rohingya refugees. It's not just the space that has structure. Refugees here also have some semblance of routine in their daily lives. Communal prayers, education, fixed cooking schedules, and medical checkups. Despite this, the harsh reality remains. As refugees, they are confined within the boundaries of the camp. Mother of 3, Shomaras, has just consulted with the doctor for some pain in her throat. She invites us into the space she lives in with her family. Pieces of cloth on some rope shape a man-made corridor, as each garment divides a larger space into 4-by-2 meter cubicles. This is where families live and sleep. One of her sons has found a way to escape and has run away. The unpredictability of life here is difficult to come to terms with.
মানি অশান্তি সহ্য করি না পারি গে না আরা যেন অশান্তি করি এন্ডিলা সহ্য করি না পারি গে গো না আর ফুয়া ইয়ার ফুয়া না রাত বেশি অশান্তি লাগে তো গো ফুয়া নাই ন মা বাপ পিন হারা বেলাইলাম এরা 33 বছর মানে কি কাম মারে থাকিলাম হড়ে অতিয়া 33 বছর রিফিউজি আরা ডাটাই না তাই এড়িয়ে বন্তি তাছিলাম এ জায়গায় আনো তারা বন্তি
For Nur Begum, coming to Aceh meant the possibility of helping her 12-year-old son with his disability. She knew that Indonesia would not be able to grant her and her family anything more than refugee status. The family were transferred here from Kuli camp, and it was only after coming to Aceh that he received a walking frame for the first time. Life in the camp is hard, with instances of intimidation. There are 9 temporary hosting sites across Aceh and North Sumatra. Of these, only 2 have been officially designated as refugee hosting sites by the Indonesian government. The remaining 7 are informal and often remote locations, which hinder the delivery of assistance. Even then, the structured sites have their own set of challenges.
Kalau menurut saya itu kendala terbesarnya adalah kebutuhan untuk yang kebersihannya. Tapi tergantung, misalnya kayak di sini itu suplai air bersihnya ya mungkin Mbak bisa lihat itu kayak pakai truk begitu, dan kemudian ketika ada sumur bor airnya sangat terbatas. Nah itu jadi hambatan juga. Terus yang kedua adalah kebersihan. Kebersihan juga kadang-kadang memang kita harus selalu mengingatkan untuk bersih.
UNHCR officials say they are working with the authorities to identify new locations that will allow consolidation across camps. This will save and better allocate resources for refugees and host communities.
It's a discussion, right? And the authorities, they have their own reasons for designating the sites, and they have. They are the sovereign decision makers, and they have the local knowledge that we don't necessarily have, right? So we are working very closely, always, with the local authorities and respect, of course, their decisions. And we try and do to the best of our ability to improve the site conditions for the refugees and to work with the host communities, because that's also very important.
While Indonesians have generally been supportive and sympathetic to the challenges faced by Rohingya refugees, recent boat arrivals have been met with unprecedented resistance, leaving people divided. Observers say there needs to be strict, standard operating procedures when it comes to the handling of Rohingya refugees, or risk potentially greater rejection against them by the locals.
Pertama, komunitas itu nggak sanggup melayani yang untuk jumlah yang tidak huge, tapi berat untuk masyarakat. Yang kedua, jangka waktu. Itu komunitas di pesisir itu kan juga tidak kaya, cukup atau bahkan miskin sebagian. Dan yang kedua, pemerintah lokal, apakah tidak ada petunjuk dari Jakarta, mereka juga menghindar untuk mengurus itu. Paling tempat kemudian UNHCR. Tapi kita tidak melihat sebuah protap guideline atau mekanisme yang mengatur bagaimana ini diperlakukan.
For Rohingya refugees in Indonesia, pathways to a sustainable future are scarce. Long-term solutions are not currently facilitated, and resettlement is not an option extended to everyone. whether in Indonesia or globally. Coming up next, we examine the challenges and limitations for Rohingya refugees and those working to facilitate a life for them. December 27, 2023. Hundreds of youths claiming to be university students stormed a temporary shelter for Rohingya refugees in Banda Aceh. The capital of Indonesia's westernmost province. The protesters demanded that they be deported.
थोड़ा तो मैं तो उधर वहाँ दर पे डरा तरह दूसरी बाद में थोड़ा नॉर्डर है हमारे कस्टमर हो रही तरह तो सरकार से हमारे होए मैं का डरा तो मैं उधर है कुल तरह माने उधर दिया डाकी गए बड़े तरह वाने लाती मारा मैं केर आमे सेंटर रोजी केर में खाने बजे मोरी तरह आठ नौ टैंक नौ तरह नौ उत्तरी तरह मत उल तो गवर्नमेंट उल्ली तो तरह राखी ना करे तो कम मजे तरह के दो हौसला से तो सरकार है तरह को लेटर रशीद भी अस्टो दी आदत कौन मेरे मीडिया डिटेल्स ना सोशल मीडिया तरह वीडियो करे कि माने ये दूसरे माने इसी तरह मोबाइल कैमरा करे हमारा भी मैं हूँ और तुम बेकिंग गुजर दिया हाँ दिन हमारा.
Police were unable to contain the crowd of about 500. Eventually, all the refugees were taken to a government office nearby. While the refugees have now been moved to other hosting sites, the hostility has remained. It was bolstered by an online campaign of misinformation, disinformation, and hate speech. They were directed at Rohingya refugees and UNHCR. Authorities say the concerns stem from economic dissatisfaction and fear that more resources are being allocated to fix the problems of foreigners than locals.
Mereka tuh ngelakuin hal-hal yang nggak masuk akal kayak itu loh. Sering misalnya seperti kayak mogok makan minta tempat yang layak. Seharusnya mereka karena tidak datang aja mereka di sini nggak diundang kayak gitu. Tapi kayak ngerasa ini tuh negara mereka.
Mending gak usah sih kalau memang merugikan orang di sekitar, jangan kesini kayak gitu. Cuman kalau memang bisa diajak kerjasama untuk maksudnya saling jaga kayak gitu, itu nggak masalah sih kalau menurut saya.
Then there's the threat of an uptick in transnational crimes like people smuggling. Authorities say it's a big business and have cracked down hard with both Rohingya and Achenese fishermen arrested.
Orang-orang Rohingya yang kami periksa ini semua mengetahui bahwa jika ingin keluar dari Bangladesh sana, Cox's Bazar sana dan ingin mendapatkan pekerjaan itu ada oleh si tersangka MA ini. Nah, namun dengan sejumlah uang, gitu loh, sejumlah uang yang harus disetorkan, yang harus dibayarkan. Mereka ada beberapa juga yang terkena ancaman juga, artinya seperti ya kalau tidak mau membayar nanti akan saya lempar di laut seperti itu. Jadi artinya kita konversi ke uang rupiah itu cukup lumayan gitu loh. Dan cukup perputaran uang yang besar ya, itu miliaran itu.
The refugees brave extremely dangerous journeys at sea, risking security challenges, violence, and malnutrition in the hope of a better future. Neela is a Rohingya refugee who has made that boat journey twice.
Indonesia region আছে, Malaysia region আছে, ইংল্যান্ড আমি তারা আড়াই লোজা হদ্দু বুড়ত গুড়ি লোজা হদ্দু না এই আন হইনে পারি কিন্তু ফাঁড়া হইলে আসিদা আড়ারে বেশি ইজ্জত করছে আড়ারে চারিমিক্ষা তো আড়ারে সুবিধা পাই তো আর ইয়ান মুসলমানের দেশ কান নিজের মুসলমানের দেশ হইলে কান আড়া সরা পাইম পাল্লা ইয়ান আশার ওরা আড়া আসিদি তো ফলে আড়া আসিদা আড়া সরা পাই মতো তাঁরারে গুজি পিছত তো ইয়ার জিন্দালা পরিস্থিতি কল চলে ইন্দিলা আড়া কোনোদিন লন না পাই ইয়ান লাবরে আশা গুদি আড়া আসিদি ইয়ান.
In Aceh, fishermen are guided by the Panglima Laut, or commanders of the sea. It's a community-based institution that practices one of the oldest customary laws in the province. In previous years, Rohingya boats in distress were rescued and allowed to disembark in Indonesia.
With 18 regencies near the sea, majority of the people in Aceh province are fishermen, sailing in boats of various sizes, including this one. And oftentimes, they are the first people in the waters to come across Rohingya refugees.
But now, some fear how rescuing Rohingya will impact their lives.
Kan ada banyak isu yang kemudian muncul di masyarakat, isu tentang TPPO, isu tentang trafficking, isu tentang hal-hal yang kemudian juga mengkhawatirkan bagi masyarakat nelayan. Maka masyarakat nelayan, Panglima Laut itu mensyaratkan 3 cara menolongnya. Yang pertama itu tidak membahayakan diri mereka. Yang kedua adalah tidak melanggar hukum negara. Yang ketiga, tidak melanggar hukum agama.
Ideally, Indonesia would like to ask the refugees to voluntarily return to their country of origin.
Permasalahannya, Rohingya ini stateless dia. Ya, di Myanmar sudah tidak dianggap sebagai warga negara Myanmar. Ya, dan mereka datang dari Cox's Bazar. Di Cox's Bazar ini mereka itu tempat pengungsian. Kita bingung kalau mau mengembalikan mereka. Ya, artinya pemulangan. Ya, kita jangan bilang deportasi ya. Kalau deportasi karena itu halnya seperti kejahatan imigrasi lah, pelanggaran imigrasi. Kita ingin pemulangan, tetapi untuk memulangkan mereka ke Cox's Bazar itu bukan negara mereka. Kita harus berkoordinasi dengan pemerintah Bangladesh untuk mau menerima mereka itu dimasukkan kembali dalam penampungan di Cox's Bazar, seperti itu kira-kira.
Indonesia is not a signatory to the 1951 Refugee Convention, and refugees have been accepted solely for humanitarian reasons. Officials say, ultimately, the international community must work together to address the root cause of the refugee crisis.